really covered everything, so I don't have much more for you. No, I'm going to try to focus on framing issues that are specific to the Atlantic. But before I do that, I want to echo what Laura said about Twitter. I have found so many stories for our writers and for myself by eavesdropping on researchers talking to each other with the sort of compression and frankness that comes with Twitter. It's one of my favorite places to be during the day, and so yeah, if you're not on there, get on there and please follow me. First thing, in terms of what we're looking for, and I've got kind of some do's and don'ts that aren't organized in that way, but just happen to be do's and don'ts. And I try to tell people to avoid one-dimensional stories that simply say a bad thing is happening. I think that's actually true for a lot of publications, but it's particularly true for ours because we do consider ourselves a magazine of ideas, which means we kind of want to illuminate the world for people and not just sort of point to a particular bad phenomena, but try to highlight all the forces that are contributing to that happening and potential solutions and that sort of thing. So when researchers come to pitch us a story, or more frequently pitch one of our staff writers or a freelancer a story, we really want them to kind of try to sketch the wider world around this. And I'm going to talk about, should I skip forward to, or we'll do it at the end. I'll give a particular example of this. Secondly, and more narrowly, frame things in terms of the Anthropocene when it comes to conservation stories. I know that there are all kinds of problems with that as a concept, and I think many people have suggested it should be called a Eurocene or a white manocene, and I think that's entirely fair.
Do you want to define it briefly for them?
Yeah, so the Anthropocene, as I suspect you'll know, is this idea that we've entered this new age of humans. And what that means is, to me anyway, is that we have to start making all kinds of choices, that we have to acknowledge that we are kind of the dominant power on planet Earth, especially when it comes to conservation issues. And so these stories, we have to sort of decide what's important to us now. And we're really looking for that, for people who are looking at the hard reality of what it is going to mean for the biosphere to coexist with the human sphere, or something like that. Another tip, don't be jaded about the media. We really are trying to help, and I know, as we said earlier, there are lots of reporters that will oversimplify a story, and that is bad for sure and can lead to bad outcomes. But they're usually doing that partly out of the nefarious motive to get more clicks, but also because they want people to look at your research, and they usually know a bit more than you do about how to get people to look at your research. They know, for instance, that a penis snake will win every time. So I understand caution in dealing with reporters, but we're all on the same team. And secondly, if you are particularly worried about how your research might be misconstrued out in the public sphere, go ahead and articulate how people have screwed up in the field in the past. I know some of the best education I've gotten talking to researchers have them being walking through very carefully what it is that people have gotten wrong about their research, their field, or common misconceptions in the public. That's tremendous, and that helps everyone. Don't automatically, and Laura talked about this a little bit, but don't automatically assume that our reader shares conservation values. The Atlantic, in particular, is, I guess, a kind of center-left publication, but we started with this kind of ethos of no party or clique, and we do try to at least appeal to the center-right. And so, there are kind of touchstones in the conservation world. Sometimes I think that the conversation inside the conservation world really assumes a set of values that are not necessarily universal. So at the same time, and this is why I included this, number 5 here, no need to sort of strain to make a very tenuous case that this, whatever the conservation program or initiative is, benefits humans directly by 5 degrees of separation. If it's just the case that we think we should live in a world where elephants live and that is a case for doing it, be open about that and say that. Finally, I'm going to end with just a couple examples. This, I think, illustrates two things. This story was written by a young writer named Joshua Sokol about Florida's panthers and the very sort of Anthropocene dilemmas they face. Just to both Laura and Rhett's point about images, and Rob is really going to bring that home point forcefully for us in a minute when he talks about National Geographic stories. But when the writer pitched this to me, and he's a very talented young writer, and so I was already excited to get an email from him, but he included this photo in the email, and I was like, that's irresistible. That's going up top. We have this very cute panther with an oxygen mask on. I immediately want to know what's happening to this panther. Is he going to live? Et cetera, et cetera. But also, this is if I recall correctly, like a 4,000 or 5,000 word story. It's a pretty in-depth feature. And it is really wonderful for how it articulates all the problems that these big cats are facing without making easy villains of people. I know, like, for instance, I have small children, and I really don't want large cats in my backyard where my children are playing. Like, there's nothing wrong with that impulse in people to be, say, afraid of large predators, but then also to want to save large predators. And that's a hard problem that we all are in the process of thinking through. And I think this writer did a really good job, and the researchers are doing a really good job in trying to tease that out. And then finally, similarly, this is a story by one of our stars, our star science writer, Ed Yong. Do you all know Ed Yong? Clap. Yay! All right. I have to, when I go to the office, I'm going to tell him that happened. So, anyway, this is a sad story. This was based on a new report that had very bad news for giraffes. But what distinguished it was that, again, he was able to layer around the story and explain all of the contributing phenomena and all the reasons that giraffes are just really, really tricky for us to keep around in our modern industrial society. And it's also just a really spectacular piece of writing, which is very important to us at The Atlantic. But if you get a chance to read it, check it out.
Yeah. I'll tweet out all these example stories afterwards and leave my Twitter handle. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.